Joining me now, Megan Hayes, former special assistant to President Biden and former White House director of message planning, and Alencia Johnson. She's an alum of the 2012 Obama campaign and the 2020 Biden campaign, now political strategist and chief impact officer at 1063 West Broad. So welcome to you both. Megan, this Harris phenomenon continues its upwards trajectory, but what is driving it? What does she capture that's different than before?
I think people are hopeful. I think she gives them hope. I think it's more youthful than, President Biden was. And I think that people really are resonating with the message that she's bringing and the enthusiasm that she's bringing. So I just think that people are looking towards the future. The former president looks past at everything and is so negative, and that's just not where the vice president is and not where the governor is. And I think that people are attracted to that. And I think it's really starting to show in the polls.
And of course, Alencia, this Harris honeymoon, that's going to carry into the convention 2 days from now. The convention's also when candidates get a real bump in the polls. How long will she keep voters excited on this level? And how much of the enthusiasm is thanks to voters getting now a third option, which particularly applies for those Biden-Trump double haters?
Yeah, look, I think obviously this is going to be a huge bump for us Democrats with, you have President Biden, you have President Obama, and then you'll have Vice President Harris and her running mate all talking next week, and which is a stark contrast to the Republican National Convention when none of the former presidents of the Republican Party or even President Trump's vice president were part of that week. Additionally, I think what you'll hear is the Democratic Party's platform to move forward. You heard Vice President Harris yesterday in North Carolina talking about her economic policy and expanding the work that she and President Biden have been doing under his administration. You're going to continue to see her talk about the policy positions. And by the time we get through Labor Day, where people are taking a break from riding this wave, we've got the debate September 10th. And let me tell you, so many people are excited to see her take on former President Donald Trump, because if you paid attention to her in those Senate Judiciary hearings, you don't want to be on the other side of that. And so we have these moments coming up after the convention that will keep momentum.
Yeah. And this also, Alencia, because MSNBC's Hayes Brown has written that her poll numbers undercut the assumption that the honeymoon is unsustainable. Granted, you've just given a target of post-Labor Day that things may slow down a little bit and then pick back up. But he notes the Harris campaign is converting enthusiasm into an army of volunteers. How critical is this to win?
That's so critical to win, especially on critical issues. Look, I was just looking at some of the polling around the ballot measures around abortion access, which will definitely continue to help galvanize those volunteers. You all have been reporting extensively on the hundreds of thousands of people who joined self-organized calls the week that she was announced as nominee. And those groups have been signing up volunteers, and people are ready to go. There are organizations that have already developed bus tours to talk about critical issues from care to gun violence prevention, and the list goes on and on. And so I think the volunteers are ready to get out there and work. Look, I'm getting calls from people who did not want to engage in political campaigns since I first worked on President Obama's campaign, and even before that, 2008. And so those people are ready to knock doors, make phone calls, do everything that it is. And I'm excited for this hundreds of thousands of volunteers throughout all of the swing states.
Yeah. So, Megan, yesterday, VP Harris started rolling out her plans for the economy. Let's take a listen to a little bit of that. Here it is.
As president, I will take on the high costs that matter most to most Americans, like the cost of food. We all know that prices went up during the pandemic when the supply chains shut down and failed. But our supply chains have now improved, and prices are still too high.
So, Megan, did you hear a significant departure from President Biden's policies? Does she need to have her own distinct economic policy agenda? Because, look, analysts keep saying the economy is strong. It continues improving. So is it about harnessing the messaging differently?
Yeah, so I think that, first of all, the President Biden's policies and his message is also her message. She also has been part of this administration and been really integral in making some of these policies be a success. I think she's taking it one step further. I think she's also recognizing, look, we understand the prices are too high. We understand that the cost of housing is too high. I want to make this better. I'm going to work to make this better if I'm elected in November. and I can take President Biden's policies and build upon them and continue to move into the future. I don't think she's going to stray from, these are Democratic principles. She's not going to stray too far from these Democratic principles of building out the middle class. That's extremely important to the Democratic values of, doing things for working families and working people. So, I think that she will continue to expand. And I think she's listening to people and understand and is trying to say, I hear you. And I think that's really important. And I think that also goes to what we were just talking about, building the enthusiasm. People are feeling heard. People are feeling optimistic that she will make some actual changes.
Mm-hmm. So, Lyndsey, Nikki Haley says that Trump needs to quit whining and says his campaign it needs to make a serious play for suburban women, college-educated voters, independents, moderate Republicans, and conservative Democrats. Here's Trump's reaction. Let's watch.
I fought Nikki very hard. I beat her in her own state by legendary numbers. And I get along with her fine. I appreciate that she endorsed me and all of that. I appreciate her advice. I have to do it my way. I ran against her.
So what do you take away from that? Is Trump leaving these voters up for grabs? And is the vice president gaining with these voting blocs yet?
It's so interesting to see Republicans act like Donald Trump is going to listen to them when he has never listened to them since 2015, right? And so he is, to your question, leaving a lot of moderate independents, swing voters who haven't decided yet who they're going to vote for, and particularly women. I mean, it is so interesting that this Republican Party has not looked at what has happened since Donald Trump got into office and then subsequently lost against President Biden, that these voters are tired of his antics. They're tired of him demonizing and attacking women. They're tired of him using these baseless attacks, these racist attacks that are really don't speak to the Republican Party platform and their policies. They're shenanigans. I mean, you're showing on the screen that at a press conference, he's got grocery store items there. And the contrast is Vice President Harris is talking about economic policy, and he has no economic policy beyond making sure that his billionaire friends get tax cuts, and then the middle class and low income Americans are bearing the brunt of that. And so they can try all they want to go on Fox News and ask him to listen, but he's not going to, and he is running his campaign into the ground.
Interesting, Megyn, that Nikki Haley voters were willing to vote for a woman president. Do you think they can swing over to Harris Walls? I mean, how far would the campaign need to deviate from what it's doing now to get Haley supporters?
I actually don't think that they need to do anything different than they're doing now. I think that these women are up for grabs. I think that the polling has shown that a lot of these independent voters that are in these swing states that are going to determine the election, are these Nikki Haley voters. And I do think that they'll vote for a woman. And I think that they are looking for something more optimistic than what they see in Donald Trump, because they didn't want to vote for him the first time. So I think that the Trump campaign is leaving a lot of votes out there for grabs. And I think the vice president and Governor Walz are out there on the trail talking to these people. I mean, Trump is out there giving press conferences in front of his members only club that these everyday people can't even afford to golf at, let alone belong to. So I just think that, they are not doing things to get these independent people who will actually, in fact, decide the election.
Okay, Megyn Hayes and Alyncia Johnson. Always good to see you both. Thank you, ladies.